Good morning, Mr. Ripperman.
Good morning, Yoslin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Kyle, you're going to try and do class while you're driving? Seems like a good idea. Okay, cool. That's fine. Whatever. All righty. Well, we still don't have Burley. I couldn't hear that, Kyle. I don't know if you.
Well, I had to take my kids to school.
Yeah.
We was a little late this morning.
I get that. No problem. All right. So we're waiting on Burley, which is why I was sitting here waiting on Burley, and I thought, oh, hey, my Zoom people are probably waiting, and I haven't let them in, so I'm sorry. We'll give it a few more minutes. Hopefully, we'll get Burley up and going, and if not, we can do this, and they can all meet on Friday to go over. No Burley.
No, Jerry is getting the engineers on it. For some reason, we had a power outage over the weekend, and we lost all connections.
Okay. It isn't that. I mean, they can show up on Friday. I mean, we're reviewing, so it's not that big of a deal. But
okay. We're not. So we randomly see them pop up.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
You want this shut?
No, you can leave it open. All right. Thank you, though. Let's go over. I want to. So this is for those of you who are here today. This could potentially be your last class, unless you want to do another review on Friday. But right, the idea is that we will review today, no class on Wednesday, and then review on Friday. Here's my thought. I've sat here all weekend being like, why would I have a class today and then open the exam on Wednesday? And that seems stupid. So the idea is that as soon as we're done today, I'll just open the exam. And if you guys want to take it between now and Sunday night, it'll be open, because that seems ridiculous. So we'll do that, and then you all can take the exam whenever you need to, and it'll be open right after class. With that in mind, you all don't need to be here Friday unless you want extra, right? If you wanted to come back and ask questions or wanted to be a part of that on Friday, you could totally do that. Otherwise, it'll be the other half of class doing review, and then you'd be done, right? If you need an extension, let me know. I cannot extend it farther than Wednesday, though. It has to be done by Wednesday. So I can't extend it any farther than Wednesday. I don't think that'll be a real big problem with most of you, but if there is a problem, let me know. As of right now, it's set to close Sunday night. I'm pretty sure it's Sunday night. And so it shouldn't be, unless there's an issue, you should be able to do it between now and Monday. Okay. Okay. I was talking, and we're kind of gonna go over some of this, but I don't think in the depth that I want to. So I'm gonna say this because it dawned on me this weekend that I probably didn't push this enough. On Friday, we talked about the Reformation, and we talked about how, well, I guess this would have been Monday and Wednesday, because we talked about the plague, and it's about the plague and people blaming Jewish people for the plague, right? And there was this idea. I said that, they've kind of been a scapegoat since the death of Jesus. That was where that started, right? Mm-hmm. However, I don't think I went in depth enough for you all to understand that it wasn't the Jews that killed Jesus, right? Like, that's not what happened. It was the Romans. The Romans did that. But when the Romans became Christians, then they were like, oh, hey, guess what? We didn't kill him. It was actually the Jewish people that killed him. Well, look, actually, it was the Romans that killed him, and that's the problem, okay? But then the story gets muddled once they become Christians, and they can't be Christians and have killed Christ, and so here's this whole thing. And so that's where we get this idea of, like, it's the Jews' fault, and it's always Jewish people's fault, right? And we just keep pushing this idea. And so if it gets into the plague, the question on the plague, and you're like, well, I wanted to talk about that. I just didn't want you coming back to, well, they killed Jesus, and so that was why people said this. Does that make sense? Like there's more context there, and you don't have to use that. I just thought that if that was something you were going to use, that I probably should explain that Romans killed Jesus, and then when they became Christian, they were like, shoot, this doesn't look good. We should probably blame somebody else. Okay, so there's the idea. Which is why, and I don't remember the movie, but there was a movie about Jesus, and I can see his face. Shoot, the actor that he got in a lot of trouble. He's always in trouble for being an anti-Semitic. Anyway, shoot. Mel Gibson, right? And he did this movie about Jesus, and everybody was really frustrated because he made it out to be like it was the Jewish people that did it, but actually it was Romans that did it. Anyway, okay, that's historic. I just want to make sure that if we're getting it crossed, I don't think I did a very good job of explaining that when we were there. Okay, so Burley's still not here. We're gonna start, and if we need something else if they come in, we'll see what we need to do. But let's get in and get this review going. All right, so the first question is, where is that? It's got to be here. Yep. Oh, there it was. Okay. So the first question asks you to talk about the Crusades. Okay. So the question is about providing who fought in the Crusades and reasons why. All right. So if we're talking about the first Crusades, you're going to want to talk about who went and the reasons why. And the people who went, right, if we go back, were kings, queens, peasants, and laborers, right? Those are the four people. And we're going through why they went. Individually, kings went in order to gain or expand their estates. Queens went, most queens didn't go. They gave money, but those who went were trying to find some sort of glory, right? Peasants are offered debt forgiveness. They're encouraged to go. And laborers, although mostly free, were provided freedom to go, okay? But the reasons for going on the crusade are broken down into, what are seven reasons. So piety, giving up everything and willingly face death for God, right? Piety. You're going to be devoted to God. That's why you're going, okay? A pilgrimage. You're going so that you can make it to the Holy Land at least once, okay? This is going to provide personal salvation, so it could potentially fit into piety as well. Peer pressure. Your buddies are going. Hey, you should probably go. You're like, well, I guess I'll go. I didn't really want to, but since my buddies are going, I guess I'll do it. Indulging in bloodlust without guilt. This is, when we're talking about the Crusades, right? We talked about this, that the Pope was trying to find a way to take care of these like later teenage boys who are like running amok and jousting and causing issues. And so what are we going to do? We're going to send them to the Crusades. Okay. They're going to go fight. So indulging in bloodlust without guilt. Adventure seeking. Money, right? Money is a huge one, especially for, what was it, third third and younger sons, right? Third and younger sons. Usually your firstborn is going to gain the kingdom. The second son is probably going to join the clergy of some in some sense. And then the rest of the sons, if there's more sons, have to figure out a way that they can have something. Okay. And they may be given some land, but they're not going to have a lot of money. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. And then personal glory. The last one is personal glory. Now, this is not asking you to provide all of these. This is asking you to provide 3 of the reasons why. Now, I don't care. Even if you have a different reason than that's on here, you can use that. I need you to come up with the 3 reasons for crusading, right? That's what we're looking for. So the 3 reasons, or 3 reasons out of these 7, or if you've got a couple others, whatever you want to use, but you only have to come up with 3. And I would suggest that you use who went crusading, the reasons for crusading, and then the significant piece, right? Just if you're going to use money, hey, you know what? Some of the third-born sons go because they might be given some land, but they're not going to have cash. And so they go crusading so they can have money. That would be the significant piece. Okay. Piety, right? You're going because for personal salvation. You are devoted to God. You're going to go on the first crusade because you are devoted. Okay. Any questions there? So you need to talk about who fought. That would be the list of the 4 people there, and then the reasons that they went. And you could even, talk about kings, why they went, queens, why they went, peasants, why they went, laborers, and why they went, and that would probably answer the question. Okay. In later crusades, so we're talking 3, 4, up to 6, some of the poorer people are given debt forgiveness, which is why they end up going. Okay. Now, the rest of this lecture could be used as context, right? So providing why they're going, what the crusade is, why they're doing that, why the Pope is telling them to go, for setting up the answer, right? Okay. Any questions about question 1 or a question about the Crusades? Okay. The second question is about medieval hierarchy. Now we talked about this. I think it was a couple weeks ago, but it was in relation to the Crusades. Let's just go through the hierarchy. Okay. So nobility, obviously the highest social standing. Nobility, they owned land, they were wealthy elites, usually by lineage, right, or heredity. You're not going to start from the bottom and like work your way up in medieval society. That's not going to happen. Okay. You've got landed nobility that had some wealth, but most of them were rich in land. Now, if you remember, I talked about this. This is a lot like our farmers here, that we've got a lot of land-rich farmers in Idaho, but cash poor, right? Like not a lot of money in hand, but they've got a lot of land. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're poor per se, but that's what's going on here is this nobility have a lot of land and they don't have any cash. So what they end up doing is taxing the peasants, right? They end up taxing the people who are on their land so they have that cash. Kings, so this is lower nobility. Kings will have both land and wealth. Okay, but then you've got these lords and they are going to have just land and they've got to tax their peasants in order to get money. Okay. Clergy is next. Clergy, this is not by birth. Basically, you join you decide that you're going to join the clergy. You're going to be trained and ordained. There's two types of clergy. So there was the regular clergy. Regular clergy was you joined the clergy at 21 years old. You decided to live or took an oath of poverty, chastity, and obedience. You take a monastic vow that made the regular clergy highly respected. Okay. This monk life imitated the suffering and death of Jesus. And you basically would sequester yourself in a monastery, and that's where you would stay, probably writing the Bible. Okay. That's regular clergy. Then there were secular clergy. Secular clergy worked in this vast hierarchical system, right? So you would have high priests, cardinals, archbishops, bishops. They all came from wealthy elite families. Okay. Below them are the urban priests. These are cathedral canons or court clerks. They would have been like your middle class. And then at the bottom, you had poor parish priests. They lived off the tithe and offerings of other parishioners. Regardless, all regular and secular clergy were held in high regard. Just you have the two, those who are living in a monastery and those who are out living amongst the people, preaching amongst people. Okay. Then you have peasants. Peasants are the largest, lowest social group. Okay. Peasants were thought to be property of the lords of the manor. So it's not necessarily they were slaves, but they were thought to be property, right? They're working the land. They required, lords required a certain amount of produce or services from these tenants. These tenants didn't have their own tools. And so even though they were working the land, they had to borrow these tools and things from whoever owned the land. Okay. You had both free and servile tenants. Oh yeah, and then it says that here. The manor owned all machinery that tenants used, which is unfortunate because once you get into like once you finish your work and then you wanted to come home and make your own, like tend your own garden, you didn't have tools. So you had to build your own tools to make that work. Okay. So they're usually rudimentary tools, whereas you're using nicer machinery or nicer tools when you're working the king's property. Okay. Within peasants, you do have townspeople. Towns held 5% of the population. There was a merchant class, skilled laborers, and craftsmen. Craftsmen, awesome, right? They make things, but then there's these tradespeople, and the tradespeople are looked down upon because they're not really using any skills. They're trading goods, and that trading goods is looked down upon. Okay, like you're not doing anything, you're just trading other people's skills. Okay, so that's peasants, right? Those are within the peasants. You're going to get skilled laborers, craftsmen, and then these tradesmen. Okay. I would also, it's up to you, but I would also probably talk about women, where women wound up. Women are obviously lower in the social hierarchy, even if you are of elite status. You could probably get some education, but you are thought to be physically, mentally, and morally weaker than men. Okay. In years past, I think we talked about this. We've had a discussion at this point about women, asking women how they feel, and most of them are like that. It still seems like it's this way. Like we haven't really moved beyond this. Virgins and celibate widows were praised for their lifestyles, right? It's always about sex for some reason when it comes back to women, right? Like super interesting. A wife was supposed to be subject and obedient to her husband. Husbands were to protect and discipline their wives. The reason for wives were to bear children. Most women were not able to choose their path, right? They could work within the home, but they couldn't be doctors, lawyers, teachers. They couldn't do anything like that. Some women did choose to go into the clergy. They would take a monastic vow as well. These women were looked highly upon. Okay, if you decided that you were going to give up being a wife and a mother, and you were going to become join the clergy, then that was a big deal, and you were looked highly upon for doing that. But not very many women did. Okay, I mean, a lot of women did. You just have to look in relation to what the other women are doing. The last one is children. Children, we start to see in the historical record about them being looked at as little adults. At 7 years old, we're sending them off to apprenticeship programs, especially if you couldn't feed your children. You wanted them to go and take this apprenticeship program, because then that person took over who they were, took over their protection, feeding them, all of these things. Okay. Marriage at this age was a young age of 12 for girls and 14 for boys. Very few married this young. It was mostly royalty that did, but that's the record that we have, right? Is that you're marrying off your sons and daughters so that you can have some sort of kinship tie to whatever kingdom that you want to marry into. Okay. We do see laws against child cruelty or abuse. However, infanticide was a regular thing, especially if you couldn't feed your children. So killing your children, abortions, things like that. Okay. Very regular during medieval time. So when we're talking about that, the question asked you to classify the 5 categories and then explain these groups. And you need to provide 2 characteristics of each. So this question, if you were doing this question, I would set it up like this. I would explain in the opening paragraph the 5 people. These are the 5. Okay. Then, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So I would explain the 5. And then I would, in the second paragraph, provide 2 characteristics of each. So 2 of the nobility, 2 of the clergy, 2 of the peasants, 2 about women, 2 about children. Then, as a significance, that last paragraph, I would probably talk about the social hierarchy and whether or not that social hierarchy is similar to today or not, what you see as being different, what you see as being the same. That's the way that I would probably answer that question. That doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. If you think that you've got a better way of doing that, feel free. I think that this is about, right, the significance that you see within this social hierarchy. Another significance could be maybe the breakout between nobility and clergy, maybe the significance about women and children, right? I mean, there's a lot of different significance here that you could really talk about. But I think that one of the easiest ways is maybe to see the social hierarchy and what it looks like, and then bring that into what does that look like today. Okay, that's a way. You all look. This will be your 4th exam here, and you all have done a great job, so I'm not really worried about it. But okay. Any questions about that? Nope. Okay, let's move on then to the plague. So the plague, the question asks you to explain 3 significant factors led by the plague in society. Okay. So we talked a lot about the plague. I spend a lot of time talking about what the plague looks like, and that you could talk about that as context. Like, look, the plague, death within 4 to 5 days. It's putrid smelling. So you had, right, people using flowers in their pockets so that they didn't smell as bad, or so that it would cover up the smell. But usually within 4 to 5 days, you were dead. Jewish people were blamed for the Black Plague. They were blamed for poisoning the water supply. They were blamed for practicing witchcraft. But the biggest thing that we want to understand is that the plague ravaged Europe to Asia, right? Northern Africa, really at this point in time, it takes off from India, it goes to China, and it winds up in Europe, all on the Silk Road. That's the way that the plague is moving, right? It moves out of India into China and then makes its way across the Silk Road into Europe. When we get here, cities are hit the hardest, right? Because you've got so many people that are living closely together and you can't get away from it. That pushes people to the periphery, so they move to the countryside. But when they move to the countryside, other people have died there, and now you've got all this influx of people, and they can't sustain the resources, which then leads to famine. Right? These are all factors. So, and you only need 3 of them, but it leads to famine. It leads to inflation. It leads to labor shortages. Okay. It also leads to, so this is social breakdown. It leads to social breakdown as people like flee cities and get out, and then they're like boarding up their houses and living together in these family enclaves. It leads to economic depression. And it leads to a lack of government authority as the plague pushes these government authorities out. So people who are left in the cities are usually poor people, and they're dying at large numbers. You get rich people that are leaving. These are usually your government leaders. They leave and go to the periphery, right? Their second home or their country home or whatever. But they take the plague with them. They die out there. Okay. Climate change is another one. During this time, you get climate change, which causes the little ice age. This is colder, wetter weather. And this decreases crop yield as well. This is a rough time, right? So 1/3 of the people in Europe, India, and Asia die. Okay, 1/3 of the people die. So if I were answering this question, I would talk about the plague in the first paragraph. I'd probably talk about the Silk Road in the first paragraph, and how the plague moved from India to China to Europe through the Silk Road, killing people along the way. Okay. And you're seeing this happening in India and Asia because, right, we've already talked about them. They also have these urban societies, these urban centers. And so people die off there, but it's not until it hits Europe that it's just wiping people out. Okay. In the second, so I would set that up. In the second paragraph, I would talk about your 3 factors. Whatever 3 factors you think that you want to talk about, right? So that could be economic depression. It could be climate change. It could be the loss of urban centers as people move out and away, not being able to take care of resources. And so famine sets in. Right? These are all factors to that. Economic depression, labor shortages, inflation. We didn't even really, I mean, we talked about it. We didn't really talk about the peasant revolts that some of this pushes. Okay, but these are the factors that you'd want to talk about. Okay, in the third paragraph, I have never done this before, but you could compare and contrast what it looks like to today and the plague. That could be a definitely significant factor. You all have a different view of the plague than my previous classes, right? Like you have lived through this and can see that there are some major things going on here, and that although this is not killing at the rate, right? COVID is not killing at the rate that the plague is or did. It's similar in the way that people, especially if you're talking about urban centers, people fled New York within months of the pandemic hitting there out into the periphery and did the exact same thing. And there are multiple stories out there where you can see that these people moving from New York out into the periphery has like damaged these rural cities, right? Now, I don't know if you've seen that here or not. And that can be something that maybe you want to talk about, maybe you don't. Another significant factor is the amount of people that's killed. This was devastating to Europe. And ultimately, this is what I've had my students write about in that third paragraph, is the significance of the Black Plague and the way that it changes society. So it moves people to the periphery, and then we're a little leery to go back to cities. And so that's what sets up like medieval societies out on the like country societies. But the biggest piece is that it leads to nationalism, right? The plague leads us to nationalism in a way that we'd never seen before. So this idea of pushing to the brink people who now have to live together and don't have the same culture, don't speak the same language. So nationalism is a result, a very significant factor to the Black Plague, okay? But that's where I would have gone, but I think you all have a different view of the plague during a pandemic. So you all can talk about that, okay? Either whatever you guys want to talk about. Whatever you think is the most significant piece, I hope that you have seen this semester that I'm really interested in what you do and how you make that connection. And as long as you make that connection, I'm usually fine with that, okay? Okay, any questions about the plague? Plague question. Okay, let's move on to the last, just lost Zoom people. I think you all are there. But I lost my screen here.
Yeah,
There we go. There you are. Okay. Oh, you can see them up there still? Okay. I just bumped the screen here. All right. Let's move to the last question, which is provide 3 reasons for the Reformation. Okay. In context of the role of Martin Luther and John Calvin, also explain how the Council of Trent changed or reaffirmed reforms. Okay. So we want to talk about, I'm not going to talk about that one. We'll talk about this one. So Martin Luther, let's start with Martin Luther. First off, the Reformation. If you want to write the first paragraph, you're going to need to understand the anti-popes, right? And this idea of indulgences. Those are the 2 major pieces of context that you're going to want to provide. The anti-popes and the indulgences. So the anti-popes, right? You've got the Avignon papacy, 1309 to 1376, which is that 7 popes living in France instead of Rome. People are not happy about that. You get the Great Schism, which is 3 men claim to be the Pope at one time. This causes some dissent. The Conciliar period, which is the final authority, rests in spiritual matters in the church, not with the Pope. So people start being like, oh, the Pope speaks for God, but when it comes to it, spiritual matters reside in the church, not with the Pope. And then the Renaissance papacy, which is that popes are like, hey, you know what? I speak for God, but really I want to be a celebrity. So the Pope is out like doing his thing, and the church is running with all of the clergy, okay? This pushes people to criticize the Catholic Church, and many people wanted to see a more egalitarian church, okay? So that would be an issue, context. You don't have to use both, although I do think that both of them, I think it's pretty easy to use both, and you don't have to go through all of these. Maybe pick one that you think, hey, the Great Schism, where 3 men were fighting over who was the Pope between 1378 and 1417 is a big deal, and that caused criticism, okay? The other criticism is indulgences, right? Indulgences is this way that you're paying for your sins. So in the beginning, you sin and you go in and talk to your clergy and you're like, hey, what is this going to cost me so that I can regain my salvation? And he's like, well, it's going to cost you $5. And you're like, perfect, here's $5. But it gets out of control to the point where people are coming in the weekend before and being like, I'm going to get lit. How much is this going to cost me? And the guy's like, $10,000. And here's a letter that you can then return back to me at the end of the weekend that says, hey, things are perfect. Okay. This is what leads Martin Luther to freak out, right? He is not happy with this idea that we can pay for indulgences. He doesn't like that. He doesn't believe that you should be doing that. This pushes the Reformation, this idea of reforming what's going on. So you've got the popes on the one hand, or the anti-popes, and remember, none of the any of the anti-popes have been sainted to this point even. Okay, none of them have been sainted. So it still looked at as this critical period in Catholicism. Okay, the indulgences are a big deal. Luther starts to protest, and his big piece, right, is the 95 Theses. He goes and tacks on the door, and the 95 Theses is against indulgences. Okay, he believes that salvation can't be bought. You can talk about a lot of the rest of this stuff. I think it's fascinating, but it's not necessary. Okay, the 95 Theses pushes, he gets excommunicated. Right, and then you get Elector Frederick, who is awesome. That guy has breast milk from the Virgin Mary, apparently. Like, has all of these things, an inventory of 17,000 items, but he protects Luther. Honestly, not as big of a deal. You don't have to use that. But this pushes reform. Okay, John Calvin. Calvin organizes the church. The Protestant church. I'm sorry. And I don't know if I was clear about that the other day either. He organizes the Protestant church because you're getting Protestant reforms, right? Protestant reforms are what's pushing reform against the Catholic Church, is what is now pushing Protestant churches. Okay. So he organizes the church into 4 offices: pastors, teachers, elders, and deacons. The pastors are at the top. They're really running things. You have teachers, they're instructing. Elders are lay people that are chosen by a council to help each parish. And then deacons dispense church goods and services. Okay, so that's the first thing that Calvin does. Okay, so during the Protestant Reformation, he's reforming Protestant churches. A lot of churches are still set up this way. Makes a lot of sense if you are a member of a religion. Okay, the other thing that he does is predestination or preordination. Prior to this, we didn't see that. I get a lot of students. I think I told you this. I've gotten a lot of students who said, no. Preordination was from the beginning. That's not true. This is a product of the Reformation. So this idea that you were preordained to do something didn't happen until Calvin comes along. And then he's got, right, this is Calvin's theology, and most Protestant religions believe in a predestination, that you were ordained or predestined to do something before you came here. Okay. Those are the 2 big pieces that you would need to talk about. So Luther and his 95 Theses, he's mad about indulgences. Calvin sets up the church, organizes the church in a different way. Okay, and then we get to the Council of Trent. The Council of Trent ultimately does nothing, right? Ultimately, the Council of Trent does nothing. They do a couple of things. They want bishops to preach in the area that they're assigned to, and they want priests to dress neatly. Other than that, they reaffirm the role of good works. They reaffirm the authority of tradition. You got to go through the right property, or the right chain of authority, and they reaffirm indulgences. Okay, so even though this is going on, the Council of Trent reaffirms all of the things that people were already mad about. It didn't change a lot. Okay, so there you go. That is what the 3 reasons Martin Luther, Calvin played, and then the Council of Trent and how that reaffirmed reforms. Then you don't have to do it this way. If you find another significant piece, you can totally write about that. But I took like 10, 15 minutes on Friday, right, to tell you, if you belong to the Catholic Church, you're a product of the Reformation. If you belong to a Protestant church, you have a connection to the Reformation. If you are an American, you have some tie to the Reformation, right? That would be the significant piece in my mind. You can write about something else if you've got something else that you think is significant. But if you are here at this point in time due to manifest destiny, due to American individualism, due to being an American because your forefathers came across the Atlantic Ocean and settled here, you are a product of the Reformation. If you are an immigrant to this country, you're probably a product of the Reformation. Okay? Like the Reformation, the significant piece is that the Reformation changes everything. At this point, it pushes people to find religious freedom. It pushes more exploration. It promotes missionary work, right? Like it does all of these things. There's so much to talk about with the significance. I've pushed it, but if there's a piece within that I've said that really clicks with you and you're like, hey, that's the significant portion for me, write about that. Okay? That's what I'd like you to do. But like I said, if you think something else, if you're like, hey, you know what, the Reformation was fascinating because of X, write about that too. Whatever you think is the most significant factor to you. Any questions about the Reformation? Okay. I'm going to do it while I'm sitting here because there you go. Okay. Also, because I'm just sitting here thinking that our date to take this exam is actually Monday. I don't know if you all knew that, but because of that, I just extended it through Monday. So you've got a week to take the final exam. Okay. I don't really like to do it so that you guys have to take it next week. I'd rather have it done so that you can get it onto your other classes. Okay. I know you've got other classes that you need to do. But with that in mind, it is well, there we go. There you go. Okay, so it is saved. It is currently open and it closes at 11:59 on Monday night. If something happens and you need extra time, let me know. Okay. The other thing is that I would appreciate it if you'd go in and take the course evaluation. That is under my evaluation, I think. Yeah, my course eval. Oh, here, let me share this with you guys. That is under my course eval right here. Okay. Are you guys not seeing that? Nope. They are not. You guys are not seeing it. I don't know. Zoom people, can you see Canvas? You're not seeing Canvas. Okay, hold on a second.
We did it first.
You did it first, but you're not now. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So my course eval is right here. You're just going to go in and then take the course evaluation. I'd appreciate that. That helps for classes, right? Like, it helps me to know what it is that went well and what didn't go well so that we can revise things, right? So going forward, I know what we need to do. So I'd appreciate it if you did. In the past, and I'll do it this time. In the past, 80%, I would give you each 10 extra points. Okay. If I can get 80% of the class to do it. I think I've only had one class that's done that. I can't see who does it individually. That's the problem. Otherwise I would give you, right. I would give you points for just doing it, but I don't get to see that. So I don't even get to see this until after the semester I've posted grades and then they'll send me a report usually in January. So otherwise I could give you that. I'd do something for you guys though. How about this? If you would email me after you took the course evaluation and tell me that you did it, I'd give you 5 extra points. How about that? Okay. If you're interested in doing that, that's up to you and you don't need to. I like when we used to do it in paper and then in paper form, then I just leave it here and you all would do them and it was easier that way. But online, it's not as great. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions? That took a lot longer than I anticipated, and I'm sorry about that. No questions? No questions. Hey, then this is our last class. I mean, unless you want to come back on Friday, but honestly, you all are prepared to take the exam right now. If you don't have class right now, you should get on and take it, right? All right. It's been fun. I hope that you understand the complexity of history, right? I usually end this class watching a video that is supposed to like turn everything I said upside down. And I haven't left time for it, and I haven't posted it either this time, just because things have been weird this semester. But we usually have a lot more discussion and talk a lot about different topics within the topics that we've been talking about this semester. But just know that history is complex, and it's evolving because we find new evidence almost on a daily basis, right? I mean, I've tried to pull out the different things that I've seen just this semester. Any of the things that I shared with you this semester were things that I found this semester. These are not things from a year or two ago. I mean, history is changing all the time. And that's what makes it a fascinating field of study. And I hope that you see that as you move forward, that we have facts and things, but also those facts have to then be pushed up against other new evidence that we find. And that's why I think history is so fascinating. Anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your semester. Good luck with everything. If you need anything, reach out to me, email, stop by my office, give me a call. I will see you all later, hopefully. Thanks, Zoom people.
Thank you, Mr. Ripperman. I
Yeah,
have a
thank you.
question.
Yeah.
I grab a class with you for next semester is history too, but my teacher told me is everything online. I don't have any meeting with you. In this class, we meeting in Zoom or is everything online?
For
History
what's that?
is history too. The second part of this one.
Yeah, and it's only online. There isn't, I mean, Dr. Tremaine teaches one that I think will be in person, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
As of right now, 102. So the second half of this class is only online. But like I said, it's exactly like this.
Okay.
And I have set up in the past for you all, I mean, for any of my students, but for anybody who's interested to do this once a week.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. If I have any question, I send you an email.
Yeah, do that. Or we can talk about it. I mean, anytime. I think that we can find a way that we can work on this for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Jocelyn. Yeah, see ya.
Ripperman.